Okay, I'm going live, inshallah, and then I will introduce with Quran. Okay, inshallah, we are live. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you all for joining the one of the last programs we have during the month of Muharram Safar Rabi Awal for the martyrdom of the father of the Imam of our time, Imam Hassan al-Askari al-Zaki alayhi salam. Inshallah, tonight we'll have Quran, some poetry, and then inshallah Shaykh speech. So inshallah we will get Quran started with recitation by Munawwar Uncle of Surah Al-Mu'minun.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم على صلاتهم يحافظون أولئك هم الوارثون الذين يرثون الفردوس هم فيها خالدون ولقد خلقنا الإنسان من سلالة من طين ثم جعلناه نطفة في قرار مكين ثم خلقنا النطفة علقة فخلقنا العلقة مضغة فخلقنا المضغة عظاما فكسونا العظام لحما ثم أنشأناه خلقا آخر خلقا آخر فتبارك الله أحسن الخالقين ثم إنكم بعد ذلك لميتون ثم إنكم يوم القيامة تبعثون ولقد خلقنا فوقكم سبع طرائق وما كنا عن الخلق غافلين Sorry, I lost my.
Ayah 18 وأنزلنا من السماء.
Thank you. وأنزلنا من السماء ماء بقدر فأسكناه في الأرض وإن على ذهاب به لقادرون فأنشأنا لكم به جنات من نخيل وأعناب لكم فيها فواكه كثيرة ومنها تأكلون وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون حتى lost it again. Sorry.
That's okay. 20. وشجرة.
وشجرة تخرج من طور سيناء تنبت بالدحن وصبغ للآكلين وإن لكم في الأنعام لعبرة نسقيكم مما في بطونها ولكم فيها منافع كثيرة ومنها تأكلون وعليها وعلى الفلك تحملون ولقد أرسلنا نوحا إلى قومه فقال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره أفلا تتقون فقال الملأ الذين كفروا من قومه ما هذا إلا بشر مثلكم يريد أن يتفضل عليكم ولو شاء الله لأنزل ملائكة ما سمعنا بهذا في آبائنا الأولين إن هو إلا رجل به جنة فتربصوا به حتى حين صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم. Inshallah, before we move on to poetry, I just wanted to add a request from today, and that was the sad news that we received of the passing away of the mother of one of our community members, um, Sister Nasim Fatima Zaidi, who was the daughter of Sayyid Azadar Hussein Zaidi, and she was the mother of our dear community member, Sister Nasreen Zaidi. So, inshallah, before we do poetry, if we can all just take a minute to recite Al Fatiha.
بسم الله الرحمن
Inshallah, I will recite a short English poem for Imam Al Askari, and then we'll have a short recitation by Brother Hassan Faraji in Farsi. I just want to pull up a small slideshow. Let's see, slideshow, share screen. Um, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your martyrdom is born to bloom, to spread and flourish from the tomb. Like a well-fashioned arch, your patience stood, with your tiring mind, by you all the prophets stood. Pain met you like a friend and set you free. Affliction still is virtue's opportunity. A blended form of a continued strife was the strength and harmony of your life. It gilds your name with a gleam of distant day, and it enlightens our dark and weary way. You spoke headlong from faith's height, but who was there to hear? They had plunged into the endless night. Our need is the pencil of the prophet in your hand. Please write our destinies and our hearts to your blessed household's land. Glorious Imam, you are for a universal reign. Your love is our game, and you are heaven's gain. You were still in your 28th spring, but you were forced to enter the martyr's ring. You are the father of the 12th Imam, whose birth was like Moses, full of alarm. You prepared the understanding of the crowds to be familiar with the sun that will hide behind the clouds. You acquainted with the nation like rays through a veil to obey the Imam through oracles real. Over your tomb the cries of Zahra raise, the anthem of the verse of purity showers its praise. We are in the warm precincts of a cheerful day, and in your martyrdom gardens of Eden lay. Your story to their little ones even the birds will explain, but they will cry as they recount it, for tonight we all weep in vain. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala
اللهم
Sayyidina.
صل على محمد وآل
Inshallah, Brother Hassan, you can go ahead and recite your piece.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد شهید زهر جفا یا حسن اصگری کشته راه خدا یا حسن عسکری پور علی نقی سرور اهل یقین کن نظری از کرم به زمره مؤمنین شفیع روز جزا رهبر دنیا و دین نتیجه تا یا حسن عسکری به بحر فضل و شرف ای که دهم گوهری وی که بعد از رسول 11 رهبری فاطمه را نور عین سلاله حیدری شهره به ابن الرضا یا حسن عسکری دشمن دونت چرا ز خانمان دور کرد به عسکر سامره زکین محصور کرد ز سم جور و ستم حزین و زرنجور کرد ز آشنان جدا یا حسن عسکری جرم تو آخر چه بود که حبس شد جای تو به کنج زندان غم منزل و مأوای تو کرده اثر زهر کین آه بر ازای تو زاده خیر الورا یا حسن عسکری السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين أي منقلب ينقلبون صلوات اللهم صل
Allahumma
على
salli ala
محمد وآل
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajhum. Thank you, Brother Hassan, for that recitation. Inshallah, before I pass it over to Sheikh for tonight, I just wanted to give a thank you to all of the people who contributed to programs during this entire Muharram, Safar, Rabiul time. To all of the people that were involved in coordinating the Zoom calls, to all of the reciters who volunteered their time to come early and recite Quran and poetry, to all of the parents who prepared their children, and whoever else recited Latmiyas at the end of program. Obviously, a thank you to all the scholars who gave their time and commitments to IBA during this virtual programs time. And also a thank you to all the people that helped organize the on-campus programs during Arba'in. So to everybody who was involved with that, the security team, the committees. Thank you to all of them on behalf of the community. Inshallah, without further ado, we'll have Sheikh speak for this evening. So please welcome him with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم به نستعين. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكري وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال موسى لأخيه هارون اخلفني في قومي وأصلح ولا تتبع سبيل المفسدين صدق الله علي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات. First and foremost, I give my condolences to each of you on the occasion which we are commemorating, and that is the Shahadat of Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi afdalu salatu wassalam. As we know that each and every one of our Imams, alayhi afdalu salatu wassalam, that they live their life in a way to guide the Ummah, to guide the Ummah in the times that they're living in, and also to prepare them for what is to come after. So as it has been mentioned, even in the very beginning, through the poetry as well, that Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi is the father of the Imam of our time, Imam al-Hujjah Ajal al-Faraj al-Sharif. So his life was such that he was preparing us for the moment in which we are living in. He was educating us in various ways to be among those individuals who are truly holding fast to the way of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. And as some ulama have also stated when they analyzed the life of Imam Hassan al-Askari, that the time that he spent in prison, which was a great part of his life, that they say that this was almost like a moment of ghaiba, like a miniature ghaiba, where there was a great deal of time where the believers, they would not be able to see the Imam. Those who were the followers or claimed to be the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu, they wouldn't see the Imam. Because throughout the Khilafah of the Abbasids, and he lived under three of the Khulafa, the Abbasid Khulafa, under Mu'taz, Muhtadi, and Mu'tamid. So under them, they kept him in prison. Each one of them had a resident. And one of the rare cases where you show that Imam Hassan al-Askari, he actually came out and he was engaged with the Ummah, or they saw him openly. This is one moment when there was a drought, and a group of Christians that came forth. Again, the Muslims, they came forth. They were making the what they call Salatul Istisqa, the salat in order to make it rain, the dua. And so they came out, nothing happened. Of course, Imam Hassan al-Askari, he was actually imprisoned at that time. So the Muslims came out once, twice, three times, and no rain came. Then a group of Christians, they came out. This is in the Iraq area, around the Baghdad. They came out, and so they prayed that there would be rain. And as they prayed there would be rain, then it began to rain. They came out again a second day because it's recommended to do it on multiple days. Second day they prayed and it rained. And there were some folks who began to have some doubt that, well, if we are on this path and we are following this path, even they're saying that they're following the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but here the Christians, they're coming and they're praying and they're making it rain. But when we pray, it's not raining. So that moment, and I believe it was during the Khilafah of Mu'taz, if I'm not mistaken, Mu'taz or Muhtadi, one of the two, Mu'taz, I believe. So at that moment, Mu'taz, he released Imam Hassan Askari. He sent a message to him. He says, release him and tell him to come to me. And so Mu'taz explained to him what was going on, why there was rain. It's because these guys are praying. So Imam Hassan Askari, alayhi salam, he stated, let them come out again, call them to come out to pray again for the rain. And Mu'taz, he said, well, people are beginning to have doubt. And you were saying, have them to come out again? He says, yes, have them to come out again. Let's see what is actually happening. So again, the group of, say, monks, they came out to pray. And Imam Hassan al-Askari, alayhi salam, he noticed the one, kind of the lead of the monks. He was praying and he was holding his hand in a particular way. So Imam Hassan al-Askari went to him and grabbed his hand. And then Imam Hassan al-Askari, he took a cloth out of his hand and he turned the monk's hand over to where a bone fell into the cloth that Imam Hassan al-Askari, alayhi salam, had. And then Imam Hassan al-Askari, he folded it up. He says, now pray for rain. And the monk prayed for rain and no rain came. So when Imam Hassan al-Askari was asked about what he took from the hand of this monk, he says, this is one of the bones of the Prophet. This is the bones of one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Prophet. And if this bone or any bone of the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, any Prophet of Allah is sent up or is elevated towards the heavens, then it will rain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send his barakah, his ni'mah down upon that. He says, and this was the reason for which the rain had come. Not because of their dua, not because of their supplication and their prayer for rain, but because of the blessing and the barakah of this bone of the Prophet. And so Imam Hassan Askari, he took this bone and he buried it, alleviating or removing the doubts that people begin to have. So this is one of the occasions in which Imam Hassan Askari, alayhi salam, that he came forth and he interacted with the Ummah. Nonetheless, as I said, Imam Hassan Askari, alayhi salam, that he was preparing the Ummah, and particularly those who were the Shia of Imam Ali, alayhi salam, those who claim to follow the Ahlul Bayt after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was preparing them. And in one case, in one instance, there was a group of folks who came to Imam Hassan saying that they were the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. And they were arguing among themselves, or they wanted to present to Imam Hassan Askari about the differences, the ikhtilaf al-Shia, the ikhtilaf and the differences that those who claim that they were followers of Ahlul Bayt, what those differences were. And they wanted Imam Hassan Askari to clarify that which stance should we have among all of these differences. And they wanted Imam Hassan Askari to present to them some sort of mu'jiza, a karama, a kind of miraculous act to show that he is the Imam, to show people that what they should be doing and to distinguish what is right and wrong. So in this engagement, Imam Hassan Askari, alayhi salam, he responded, he says, إِنَّمَا خَاطَبَ اللَّهُ الْعَاقِلَ وَالنَّاسُ فِيَّ عَلَى طَبَقَاتٍ. He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he only speaks to those folks who are rational, who are aqil. Again, they use their intellect. And the hadith is a little bit longer than this, and I'll express or speak about some of those aspects that Imam Hassan Askari brought up. But he says that even when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he brought forth miracles for people to understand that he is a Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people, Imam Hassan Askari said, people called him a magician, they called him a liar. They didn't accept that. But the one thing that Imam Hassan Askari he is pointing to, he says that the greatest proof that a person would have is his intellect, al-aqil, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّمَا خَاطَبَ اللَّهُ الْعَاقِلِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to those individuals, he spoke to those people who use their intellect, who use their mind, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. One of the greatest blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to mankind. Thereafter, he says that the people with regards to me, with regards to the imamat, he says they're on three levels, there are three types. And I'll quickly go through these three types. He says, al-mustabsiru ala sabil al-najat. He says those individuals who have insight on the path of righteousness, on the path of salvation. So just briefly what the Imam he says about them, and I'll come back to them. So that's the first group, those who have insight on this path of salvation. And he says, وَطَبَقَةٌ لَمْ تَأْخُذِ الْحَقِّ مِنْ أَهْلِ. He says, and then there's a second group. Why is there this differences? This is because there's a second group, again, they take information from غَيْرِ الْأَهْلِ. So those folks who are not the source of knowledge. And so therefore, they're on a different path. Then he says, طَبَقَةٌ إِسْتَحْوَذَ عَلَيْهِمُ الشَّيْطَانِ. And then there's a group that Shaitan has overcome them, has, again, grasped them, and with his whim, they're following his whim. So Imam Hassan Askari, he says, this is the state of the people with regards to my imamat, my wilayah, my authority. And of course, this will also affect what they would believe with regards to Imam Zaman, Ajal Faraj al-Sharif. And note that Imam Hassan Askari, he's only speaking about those folks who were supposedly claiming to be the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt. He categorized them in this group because the people who came to Imam Hassan Askari, that's what they were presenting to Imam Hassan Askari. Ikhtilaf al-Shia. And if we look out through time, we find that with regards to the imamat of Ahlul Bayt, up until the time of Imam Hassan Askari, there were different groups who that formed, and they formed also various concepts of the imamat. Among the first group were the Kaysaniya, and this was they claimed that Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, that he was the imam, and he went into ghaiba, and he will return. And this is after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, at one point he left from Medina, says that he went to the outskirts, he went and he lived a life of a hermit. He didn't want to associate and involve himself with others, with the community. And so this was used by some folks to say that, oh, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, he's actually the imam. And he went into ghaiba and he will return, basically as the Mahdi. Of course, then, even during the time of Imam Hassan Askari, you had those who were the Zaydiyya. Again, their concept of imamat was based upon the imam being a revolutionary like Imam Hussein, and they had to rise up against the corrupt leaders. And so we see throughout the Abbasid dynasty, many times the Zaydiyas, they would rise up against the Abbasids. They would have many wars. They in Yemen and in various places, they rose up against the Abbasids. And then after Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, there were two other groups that vied for this idea and this concept of imamat. One was the eldest son of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, according to history, by the name of Abdullah Aftah. So Abdullah Aftah, according to the history, say that he was the eldest son of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, and this is why quite often we call Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq Abu Abdullah. So Abu Abdullah as-Sadiq, because of his son Abdullah Aftah. And after the Shahadat of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, Abdullah, he claimed imamat, that he was the imam. And this group, they were called the Fatahiyya. They didn't last that long. Again, much of their aqeedah and ideology was much like the Murji'ah, who believed that, no, we don't pass judgment on anyone. People can do whatever they want as far as religion. And at the end of our life, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will be the one who will judge about what we've done and what we've believed. The other is the Ismailiyya, who they followed Ismail, according to some of the historical accounts, that he was the second eldest. And of course, some historical accounts say that he was the eldest, others say that he was the second eldest, and Abdullah was the eldest. So Ismailis, again, they believe that the imamate went through Ismail, although he passed away during the lifetime of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. They said, okay, well, he went into Ghaiba and he will return. This was the concept, again, of the Mahdi coming back. It was applied to Muhammad ibn Hanafiya among the Kaysaniya, and then secondly among the Ismaili, with regards to Ismail. And then you had those who stopped, or what we call the Waqifiyya, who only accepted the imamate up until Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi wassalam. And he said that Imam Musa Kadhim, he did not die. He was not shaheed. But rather he was taken up by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Imam Musa Kadhim, he will return. Again, this idea and the concept of the Mahdi going into occultation and coming back, because this is something that we find as a common idea among those who follow the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam. So Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam, he had to bring about, or at least prepare the ummah for this idea and the concept of Imam al-Zamani, Imam al-Hujjah Ajal Faraju Sharif, and the occultation that the Imam would go through, and the return that the Imam, he will have. And as some of these scholars have stated, that after Imam Rida alayhi salatu, there was no claim of various schools of thought where their, you could say their aqidah, their belief system varied greatly from that of the 12 Imams alayhim salatu that we believe in. So going back to those groups that Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salatu, he stated these three groups that, if we analyze, were similar to the groups during the time of Nabi Saleh, alayhi salam, and similar to the kind of history of Nabi Saleh, because several of our prophets as well, if we read their history, that they too went through a type of absence from their ummah. One of them was Nabi Saleh. Of course, the other one was the Prophet Musa, alayhi salam. We read in verse 142 of Surah Al-A'raf, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he narrates that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called Musa to Mount Sinai, and this is after he saves Bani Israel from the clutches of the Pharaoh, and then Musa, he has an appointment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Musa, he tells his brother, وَقَالَ مُوسَى لِأَخِيهِ Harun. And Musa, he tells Harun, أُخْلُفْنِي فِي قَوْمِي. He says, you succeed me with regards to the ummah, with regards to my followers. وَأَصْلِحْ وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. He says, and be upright, be righteous, and do not follow the path of those who are corrupt. So those three groups, so the Musa, he went through this kind of period of, you could say, or you can classify it as a type of occultation. Saleh also went through a period in which he went away from his people. And this is after he brought about this miracle. He asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring about the miracle of the she-camel. And then the Prophet Saleh, he stepped away from his people for some time. And then he states in that history of Nabi Saleh alayhi salam, he states that when he returned, the people had divided into three groups. There was one group that they were absolutely certain about the message that Saleh alayhi salam he had delivered and he had to his people, and he expressed among them. A second group had doubt, meaning that they were in between. There were some things that they had some certainty about, other things they were doubting. So their faith and their iman was not that strong. The third group, as in this, we read in the story of Saleh, these are people who were in opposition, absolute opposition to Saleh. So in his tabligh, in his calling again his people, he said he started with that second group, the ones who had doubt, in order to again clear their doubt, to make their iman strong. And after that, he went to those who opposed him, and he called them again to righteousness, to the path of truth, to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then after that, he again went to the people who had certainty, and because they didn't need much in order to, again, to increase their iman. It wasn't to save their iman, no, they had iman, but to increase their iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the path that they were on. So Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi hafizatu wassalam is faced with a similar type of grouping. Those who are mustabsir ala sabil al-najah, as he says, that they have insight and they're on this path of salvation. Of course, Islam in itself, in very general sense, is a path of salvation. But in the more specific sense, as we understand that Islam and following the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salam and following the 12 Imams that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had named, he had pointed out, that our Imam alayhim afdalus salam, they themselves have pointed out, they have made indication that these are the Imams. So these folks, they are mutamassikun bil haqq. They hold fast to that truth. That truth that, again, we find in all of the text of the Muslims, that there will be 12 Khalifa after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There will be 12 righteous Khalifa. There will be 12 Imams after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these folks, one of their characteristics, as Imam Hassan al-Askari, he points out, he says they are متعلق بفرع الأصل غير شاك ولا مرتاب لا يجد عني ملجأ. He says these folks, they hold fast and they are connected to fara al-asl. They're connected to, you could say, the branches that stem forth from the roots. Again, they're connected to that original source. And what connects us to that source, according to some of the ulama, when they give commentary of this statement of Imam Hassan al-Askari, they say that asl is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That origin is Rasulullah. And the Imams alayhim afdalus salam, they are the branches. They're connected to that without any doubt, without any suspicions, and they only find in Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi hafizatu wassalam that he is the one, he is the person in whom their salvation is in. And this is something that even a number of the guards that the Abbasid Khulafa, they put Imam Hassan al-Askari under their supervision. Yes, they were from that second group, that they were taking their information from the wrong source. But when they interacted and they saw the Imam Hassan al-Askari, that he is engaged in ibadah, that when he makes dua, those duas are answered, then they became among this first group. They became the followers of Imam Hassan al-Askari. One interesting point as well, when we speak about this quality that Imam Hassan al-Askari, he is pointing out about this group of Shia, that they are those who have insight and they're connected to the branches, they're connected to something that will connect them to the asl. We can also understand this as well with regards to the life of Imam Hassan Askari and his shahada. That after Imam Hassan Askari, when he was shaheed, Imam Zaman Ajal Faraj Sharif, he was in Ghaiba. He was still in Ghaiba. He came out to do the funeral of his father, but then he went back into Ghaiba. And in that moment of Ghaiba, some of the Shia, they would come to the house of Imam Hassan Askari, looking for the Imam of the time. And Sayyidat Hakima, again, the aunt of alayhi salam, the aunt of Imam Zaman Ajal Faraj Sharif, that whenever she was asked that, okay, where's the Hujjah? Where's the Imam of Hujjah? So Sayyidat Hakima, she would refer people that if you have a question, if you have some sort of need, says, then you refer to Jadda. Jadda was the grandmother of Imam Hassan, Imam Zaman Ajal Faraj Sharif, the wife, the mother of Imam Hassan al-Askari. Jadda, that she was known as someone who was arifa. She was someone who had a great deal of knowledge. And so in that period of Ghaiba, she became the fara. She became that branch to which the Shia, those again who had that insight, they will refer back to her. And of course, there was, in one instance, one person, he questioned, he says, well, why do we have to refer to her? That I came to see the Imam of our time. And Sayyidah Hakima, she responded, she says that, well, when Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, when he was shaheed on the plains of Karbala, and Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salatu wasalam, that he was ill, being transferred to Kufa, to Sham, back to Karbala. She said, who did the people refer to? They referred to Sayyidah Aqila, Zainab salamullah alayha. And so she said, in the same manner, that in this moment, you refer back to Jadda. You refer back to Susan, the grandmother of Imam Zaman, the mother of Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam. All of this, as we see, even Imam Hussein was preparing us for this moment, was preparing the Shia for even that moment right after the shahadat of Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam. Inshallah, we'll come back, if we have time, back to some of those qualities that this first group, that they should have and they should exemplify, because it's very important to understand the qualities of that first group, especially, inshallah, that we are among that first group. The second group, as Imam Hassan Askari, he says, that these people, they didn't take the truth, they didn't take their knowledge from the people of knowledge. فهم كراكب البحر يموج عند موجه ويسكن عند سكونه. He says, and because of this, what happens, he says, they're like people who are riding upon the ocean, that they rise with the tide of the ocean, with the wave of the ocean, and they fall again with the tide, the waves of the ocean. Meaning that their position is not one that is, again, solid, it is firm upon that sabil and najat. No, rather they rise and fall. Of course, if we read the history of not only the time of our Imma alayhim salatu wasalam, even thereafter, the fitna that arose up. In fact, this is the way that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, he describes fitna. When he was asked about, what is fitna? Explain for us, bayyan. Explain for us what is fitna. So Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, it's like a wave, like a moj. And that wave, when it comes up, when it rises up and people go with it, and it washes people with it. And when the tide goes back, it pulls people back. and it takes them off track. Again, they get excited. Why? Because perhaps there's someone who's charismatic. They follow behind what is stated rather than looking at what is being said, looking for that haqq, looking for that truth in what they're stating, in their actions, and what they're doing. And I always say, unfortunately, many people are on this second level, that they follow the waves up and down, again, with regards to, again, the Ahlul Bayt. Because the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdhalu salam, they were very clear about who their Shia were. And that third group and their interaction with the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdhalu salam, as the Imam, he stated, he says, وَتَبَقَةٌ إِسْتَحْوَذَ عَلَيْهِمُ الشَّيْطَانِ, that group who Shaitan has championed over them. وَشَأْنُهُمْ الرَّدُّ عَلَى أَهْلِ الْحَقِّ وَدَفْعُ الْحَقِّ بِالْبَاطِلِ. He says, and their quality is that they reject and they repel the people of truth with falsehood. حَسَدًا مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِهِمْ. Why? Because of jealousy, that which is inside them. So they see the people of truth, but yet they reject them because of jealousy. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he described a group of people, actually those who were the people of Kufa, he described them in this manner. He said that they made bay'ah to me. They vowed to stay on the path of truth and to stand against injustice. Then he says, وَلَكِنْ إِسْتَحْوَذَ عَلَيْهِمُ الشَّيْطَانِ. That, however, Shaitan has overcome them, has taken them over. And they don't see any other way except for to kill me. So when we think of those folks that, again, they understand the right of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam, but yet they stand against justice. And not only do they stand against justice, they go even to the extent where they're killing the imams, they're killing the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam. Although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states in the Quran that all of the Muslims know that there was no reward, لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا مودة في القربى. That I ask no reward from you, from the Ummah, from anyone who says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. There's no reward for this beautiful Quran, for this beautiful way of life, this sabil al-najat, إلا مودة في القربى, except for love of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdhalu. And that love for Ahlul Bayt, it must be expressed in the best of ways. That love for Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdhalu is not simply to say that, oh, well, I love Ahlul Bayt. But one's actions do not reflect the actions of Ahlul Bayt, of Muhammad wa al Muhammad. And that is the characteristics of that first group that we explained, those folks who say that they follow Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, al-mustabsiru ala sabil al-najat. Those folks who have insight and are on the path of salvation, mutamassikun bil-haq, holding fast to truth, muta'allaqun bi-far' al-asl. They're connected to the far' al-asl. They're connected to the branches with very strong roots. Of course, that very strong root, as we mentioned, according to some ulama, they say it is the Prophet. And the branches are the Ahlul Bayt. But as well, we can understand that the root is the Quran. And the branches are the words and the statements of Ahlul Bayt. And one very beautiful example of this comes from the advice of Imam Hassan al-Askari to his Shia. He tells them, ittaqullaha wa kunu zaynan wa la takunu shaynan. He says, be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala And what does that consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that taqwa Allah, what does it look like? In the words of Imam Hasan Askari, he says, it is to be kunu zaynan wala tukunu shaynan. To be an ornament for Ahlul Bayt. And do not be those individuals who are a sore thumb, as we say, or that thing which is a disappointment to Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam. And this word in itself, this statement, this advice, which I'll complete, is a very beautiful hadith, but this is only part of it. But let's see how it actually connects to the Quran. That if the asl is the Quran, and the state and the fara is the words of Ahlul Bayt, this is the fara. Be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, those who are Shia, as Imam Hasan Askari is speaking to them, and be an ornament for the Ahlul Bayt. Be an ornament of goodness, not someone that the Ahlul Bayt are ashamed of or upset with. And where is this in the Quran? As we mentioned that in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he explains the story of the Prophet Musa, at one point he goes into the, as we could say, a type of ghaiba, a type of occultation, where he takes some time away from his people after saving them from the clutches of Fir'aun. He goes to Mount Sinan, and in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he narrates the conversation between Musa and Harun. He tells Harun, he says, Ya akhi, ukhlufni fi qawmi. So be that person who is like my Khalifa. Ukhlufni. In other words, your actions after me should represent me, should represent what Nabi Musa stands for. So Nabi Harun is told that whatever I stand for, the way I act, the way I am, then you should be after me while I, again, take this absence from you, from my ummah. And what should that action be like? He says, وَأَصْلِحْ وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. Be righteous and do not follow the path of the corrupt. And this is what we can say khalafatul khas. It is very general, very specific. But that specific action as well also applied to the people. Why? Because Harun is left there as an example. That if you want to live your life like the Prophet Musa, then you follow the example that he is left behind, and that is Harun. And in this case, Harun is the Prophet. But what's important here is to show that Harun was the example of Islah, the example of righteousness, the example of a person who does not follow a path of corruption. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he also points out in the expectation that Musa had, even for his nation, even for his ummah, which was, again, that khilafatul am. So Harun's position was khilafatul khas. He had a very specific mission to be an example and to be the vicegerent, to be that role model after the Prophet Musa. But so did the people, so did the ummah, because they were given that example to follow. So again, their actions, that if they followed Harun, then their actions too would have been like that of Musa alayhi salam. And so when Musa, he returned, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he narrates this event in verse 150 of Surah Al-A'raf. He says, وَلَمَّا رَجَعَ مُوسَى إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ غَضْبَانَ أَسِفًا. He says, and when Musa, he returned back to his people, upset. He was upset with them. And he was disappointed. غَضْبَانَ أَسِفًا. قَالَ بِئْسَ مَا خَلَفْتُمُونِي مِنْ بَعْدِي. He said, you have not only disappointed me, that you have showed the worst example after me. In other words, and we know the story of what happened to Bani Israel after Musa, he went into that minor occultation. Again, a majority of them left Harun, didn't listen to Harun. They, again, created this golden calf and they begin to worship him. Only a handful continue to follow Harun and to listen to Harun, to follow that example. And likewise, when we see that, again, Imam Hassan al-Askari, wasalam, that upon his Shahada, and Imam Zaman Ajul Faraj Sharif, that he is the Imam and he is in the occultation, we are expecting his return. And in that moment of intidar, how should our actions be? Should we be such that when the Imam, he returns, that he says to us what Musa said to his people when he returned to them, غَضَبَانًا asifa, upset, disappointed, saying that بِئْسَ مَا خَلَفْتُمُونِي مِنْ بَعْدِي, what was your actions after me during this time of my absence? We will be questioned by the Imam of our time. That did we live based on the advice of his father, Imam Hassan al-Askari, which is also the advice of Imam Sadiq, the advice of all of our Imam. Kunu zayna wa la takunu shayna. Be an ornament of beauty for Ahlul Bayt. Not to be a disappointment to Ahlul Bayt. And how do we do that? Imam Hassan al-Askari, he continues that by explaining what does it mean to be zaynan, ala takunu shayna. He says, habbibuna ila nas wa tubaghiduna. He says, make us beloved in the eyes of people. And the only way that we can make them beloved in the eyes of people, if our actions are like the actions of Ahlul Bayt. That if we are, again, engaged in our ibadat, in our salat, and being truthful, we uphold the characteristics of Ahlul Bayt, as we see that Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi hafizahullah, he did. Even those folks who were enemies, that they will become friends and followers. Yes, there will be that third group who, out of jealousy and out of envy, that they will want to destroy truth. Daf'ul haqqi bil batil. But with what? With falsehood. Things which are clearly wrong. But if we have that characteristics of Ahlul Bayt, then we would draw in the love of people towards the Ahlul Bayt. And Imam, he says, جُرُّوا إِلَيْنَا كُلَّ مَوَدَّةٍ وَادْفَعُوا عَنَّا كُلَّ كَبِيرٍ. This is the final advice of Imam. He says, جُرُّوا إِلَيْنَا كُلَّ مَوَدَّةٍ. He says, every love should be brought forth and directed towards us, towards Ahlul Bayt. And of course, we know what this is in the Quran. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, La as'alkum, O Rasulullah, tell your ummah, La as'alukum alayhi ajran illa mawaddata fil qurba. That tell them that I only require love of the near ones. And here Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi hafizahullah, he's telling those folks who are among his Shia, those who have insight, he says, Jurru ilayna kull mawadda. Not simply say that you love Ahlul Bayt, but live your life like the Ahlul Bayt. And by doing that, Jurru, you will attract people towards that love of Ahlul Bayt. Because they will see that, why do you act the way you do? Why is your mannerisms the way your mannerisms are? So because this is the way of Ahlul Bayt. And you will attract people to that love of Ahlul Bayt. وَادْفُوا عَنَّا كُلَّ قَبِيلٍ. And repel from us and remove from us every type of despicable, wicked, and unacceptable action. Meaning that your actions should not be such that people, they turn away from Ahlul Bayt. They say, oh, well, if you're a follower of Ahlul Bayt and if this is what they stand for, then no, we don't want to be. They should see your actions, they should see your mannerisms, such that when you engage with them, you interact with them, they say, oh, if this is the way of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, then this is the way that I want to live my life. This is the way I live. And when you live in that manner, you will draw that second group towards you. Those people who maybe getting their information from the wrong source, the wrong place, they will come. However, those who want to combat truth with falsehood, then there's no hope in them. As Imam Hassan Askari alayhi he says about them, he says, فَدَعْ مَنْ ذَهَبَ يَمِينًا وَشِمَالًا. Yes, those folks who, unfortunately, they have made their hearts hard. They have blinded themselves with regards to truth. They reject truth with falsehood, knowing that it is falsehood, knowing that it is incorrect. He says, فَدَعْ مَنْ ذَهَبَ يَمِينًا وَشِمَالًا. As even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells the Prophet of Allah, he tells them that there will be some folks, he says, سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتُهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Whether you warn them or do not warn them, they won't believe. They will not come upon that path. They have made themselves deaf. They have made themselves blind to truth. They have hardened their hearts and closed their hearts towards truth. And this is the state of the Abbasid government, the state of the Khulafa that Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi he lived under. Mu'taz, Muhtadi, and finally Mu'tamid. They knew of the prophecy that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he stated that even if there's one day left upon this earth, there will be one who rises up from among his offspring, and he will fill the earth with justice as it had been filled with injustice. The Abbasids, they knew this. And this is why they kept Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi under constant surveillance, under pressure, under oppression, imprisoned, until the point that Mu'tamid, that he could no longer bear the anxiety, that perhaps the Imam would come and it would be his government that would be overturned. Again, they didn't know that when this would happen, that immediately after the birth of Imam or some time after the birth of Imam, that their government, their oppression would cease, would come to an end. And particularly also because in that time as well, we find many uprisings against the Abbasid government. Some by the Zaydiyya, some by others who they considered themselves, or they were called, at least in the historical account, they say Al-Alawiyya, that they were rising up against the Abbasids. So Mu'tamid, he could no longer take that anxiety that perhaps he will be the one that will fall to the man. So at that point, he had ordered the men who were guarding Imam Hassan al-Askari, who were bringing the food to Imam Hassan al-Askari, to poison the food of Imam Hassan al-Askari. That food was poisoned. It was brought to Imam Hassan al-Askari. He consumed the poison, which led to his shahada. But you see that it was not simply enough for Mu'tamid to poison the Imam. It is stated from the historical accounts, and Mu'tamid, he was trying to distance himself to make it seem that he had not done anything wrong, that the Imam had died from natural causes. In fact, as the Imam, he fell ill from the poison that he was given by Mu'tamid. It said that Mu'tamid, he called for doctors. He said, even I will call for the best of doctors, that to come and to be with Ibn al-Rida. They called Imam Hassan al-Askari the son of Rida. To be with Imam Hassan al-Askari. He said to care for them. But when the ulama, they actually analyzed this report, this account, they said that Mu'tamid, on one hand, he was concerned that Imam Hassan al-Askari, that he will say something, that he would expose that he had been poisoned by Mu'tamid. So he didn't want this news to get out on one hand. And on the other hand, he wanted the doctors to see how well the poison was working on the body of Imam Hassan al-Askari. So it says that when Imam Hassan al-Askari, that he passed away, that he didn't pass away with his family around him and with his family to his side, there being with him, that most of them, they had been scattered because he was under surveillance, even in his sickness, even in his ailment, they kept Imam Hassan al-Askari under surveillance. What oppression have they done to Imam Hassan al-Askari? So in some sense, yes, that death of Imam Hassan al-Askari parallels the one of Imam Hussein, where Imam Hussein was left alone on the plains of Karbala without his family to come and comfort him. There was no one for Imam Hussein, that after Imam Hussein was martyred on the plains of Karbala, to take the head of Imam Hussein and to place it in their lap. This is the same for Imam Hassan al-Askari, that there was no one there to place the head of Imam Hassan al-Askari in their lap. Imam, he died again without his family around him, in a state of loneliness. But after the Imam, he had passed away, at that moment, the family, they were allowed to come and to gather around the Imam. One of the companions of Imam Hassan al-Askari, by the name of Abu Adyan, he had gone out to deliver the letters of Imam Hassan al-Askari. And he was told by Imam Hassan al-Askari, he said that you will be gone for 15 days, and when you come back, you will see me that I am on the maghsal, I'm on the place where my body will be washed. He says, he tells Abu Adyan, he says, when you come, you will see this. And when you see one who comes forth to read the prayers upon my body, know that that is the Imam of the time. He is your Imam after me. So Abu Adyan, he said he came back on the 15th day, and he saw that Imam Hassan al-Askari, that he was upon the maghsal, his body had been washed, that he had been given kafan. And as he had been given kafan, the Ahlul Bayt and a few of the followers of Imam, they were around him. They were crying and they were wailing, Ya Sayyida, wa Shahida, wa Imama. They said that the brother of Imam Hassan al-Askari, Ja'far, he came forth as if he was the Imam, as he was going to pray on the body of Imam al-Hassan al-Askari. But at that moment, he saw a young boy enter into the room. And as that young boy, he came into the room, Ja'far, he stood back, and they were wondering, the people were wondering that, why is this elderly man, why is he standing back for this young boy? Ja'far, he had no choice but to say that, yes, this is the Imam. This is the Imam of the time. Ajramakumullah. Today we give our condolences to the Imam of our time. We give the condolences to Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman. عظم الله أجوركم يا صاحب العصر والزمان على والدك الحسن العسكري. That our condolences upon you, for you, O our Imam, for the death and the shahadat of your father, Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا وأي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم بحق هذا المجلس العسكري اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وقضي حوائجنا واشفي مرضانا وارحم أمواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه وتحت لوائه بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya 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 Hussein. Alvida, 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 eh Hussein, alvida. Alvida, 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 Hussein. ये सदाए फुगार मातम नौह और गम की ये जीनतें, चाहता है ये दिल यूं ही कायम रहे, चाहता है ये दिल यूं ही कायम रहे। आह फटता है दिल किस तरह ये कहे, अलविदा 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 ए हुसैन, अलविदा 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 ए हुसैन। मेरे मेहमान है आखिरी ये सलाम, तुझ पे कुर्बान है आखिरी ये सलाम, शाह ज़ीशान है आखिरी ये सलाम, शाह ज़ीशान है आखिरी ये सलाम। दिल है वीरान है आखिरी ये सलाम, अलविदा 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 ए हुसैन, अलविदा 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 ए हुसैन। बख्श दे हो गई हो जो कोई खता, आपके खिदमत न हमसे अदा हो सका, गम यही है न जी भर के मातम किया, गम यही है न जी भर के मातम किया, तेरी खातिर न क्यों अपना सर दे दिया, अलविदा 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 ए हुसैन, अलविदा 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 ए हुसैन। गर्जिए साल भर फिर करेंगे ये गम, रोएंगे फिर तेरे गम में मिलकर बहाम, और अगर मर गए तो ये होगा अलाम, और अगर मर गए तो ये होगा अलाम। आए अफसोस जी भर के रोए न हम, अलविदा 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 ए हुसैन, अलविदा 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 ए हुसैन, अलविदा ए हुसैन, ए हुसैन अलविदा, अलविदा ए शहे मशरक़ैन, अलविदा बिन्ते अहमद के नूर ऐन, अलविदा बिन्ते अहमद के नूर ऐन, अलविदा है मुजाहिद के लब पर ये बैन, अलविदा 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 ए हुसैन, अलविदा 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 ए हुसैन, अलविदा 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 ए हुसैन। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन।
Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, we'll have Sheikh end with ziyarah.
Okay, inshallah. في زيارة الإمام حسن العسكري عليه الصلاة والسلام. أزور سيدي ومولاي أصالة عن نفسي ونيابة عن والدي ووالدي والدي ومن قلدني بالزيارة. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا أبا محمد الحسن بن علي الهادي المهتدي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا ولي الله وابن أوليائه. السلام عليك يا حجة الله وابن حججه. السلام عليك يا صفي الله وابن أصفيائه. السلام عليك يا خليفة الله وابن خلفائه وأبا خليفته. السلام عليك يا ابن خاتم النبيين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيرة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا ابن الأئمة الهادين. السلام عليك يا ابن الأوصياء الراشدين. السلام عليك يا عصمة المتقين. السلام عليك يا إمام الفائزين. السلام عليك يا ركن المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فرج الملهوفين. السلام عليك يا وارث الأنبياء المنتجبين. السلام عليك يا خازن علمي وصي رسول الله. السلام عليك أيها الداعي بحكم الله. السلام عليك أيها الناطق بكتاب الله. السلام عليك يا حجة الحجج. السلام عليك يا هادي الأمم. السلام عليك يا ولي النعم. السلام عليك يا عيبة العلم. السلام عليك يا سفينة الحلم. السلام عليك يا أبا الإمام المنتظر الظاهرة للعاقل حجة والثابتة في اليقين معرفة المحتجب عن أعين الظالمين والمغيب عن دولة الفاسقين والمعيد ربنا به الإسلام جديدا بعد الانتماس والقرآن غضا بعد الاندراس. أشهد يا مولاي أنك أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر ودعوت إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وعبدت الله مخلصا حتى أتاك اليقين. أسأل الله بالشأن التي لكم عنده أن يتقبل زيارتي لكم ويشكر سعي إليكم ويستجيب دعائي بكم ويجعلني من أنصار الحق واتباعه وأشياعه ومواليه ومحبيه. والسلام عليك ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك وجعل الله من أعوانك وانصارك والمستشهدين وتحت لوائك. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Please recite Surah Fatiha for all of the marhumin, mu'minin and mu'minat, especially for our marhumin and the mother of our beloved community member. Al-Fatiha ma'a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
اللهم
Bismillahir
صل على
Rahmanir
محمد
Rahim. Allah, Allah,
بسم الله.
Allah. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. صراط الذين غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. اللهم صل.
Thank you, Sheikh, and everyone else who participated in the program tonight. Inshallah, we will get a chance to see everybody very soon. Be safe, and thank you again for tuning into the last majlis of this Muharram Safar Rabiul in 2020. في أمان الله والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.